ومن أحسن قولا ممن دعا إلى الله وعمل صالحا وقال إنني من المسلمين.
الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهدي الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. أما بعد، فقال سبحانه وتعالى بعد أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله حق تقاته ولا تموتن إلا وأنتم مسلمون. وقال سبحانه وتعالى قد أفلح المؤمنون الذين هم في صلاتهم خاشعون. Alhamdulillah, in this reminder that we have, the Jum'ah, the khutbah, it's a tadhkirah, it's a reminder. It's not a political rally, it's not a place to just go through a ritual where everybody kind of zooms out and focuses away. Even if somebody speaks during the khutbah, even if somebody speaks to you and you tell them, shh, you have ruined your khutbah. People, when they would play with the pebbles, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam would tell them, you have ruined your Jum'ah. Today we see people sitting in the khutbah, Snapchatting and answering texts and things. No, the khutbah is a tadhkirah, it's a reminder. This is your iman boost, this is your reset button for the week. And that's why it's from the sunnah that we pay attention, that we don't look here and there, we don't zoom away, we don't sleep through the khutbah, rather we take a lesson from it. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one that holds the keys to all success. We all know this. Rizq is in the hands of Allah. Al-Fath, the victory, is in the hands of Allah. Nusra is with Allah. Everything is with Allah. But today, a lot of us, our focus is not on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You know, when some calamity happens, the first focus we have, we run to the makhluk, not the khaliq. We run to the creation, not the creator. First thing that happens, we run to medicine. Nobody thinks, let me make dua. And if we do, it's a very kind of a ritual to get out of the way. Yeah, just make dua and then go to the doctor. Every calamity that comes, the first thing we do is run to some kuffar. Help us. UN, help us. Government, help us. Protest, cry, because the kuffar will help us. But the funny thing is, you see 100,000 people protesting, but not even 10 people in the masjid for Fajr. So then you realize, and I know this may not be popular, but I don't really care about popularity. You realize that we have lost the khashya of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We've lost the ma'rifat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And I'll explain these terms inshallah. See, the means of success of the Sahaba radiyallahu anhum was their relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When you know that there is a power, there is a strength, there is an ability, then you gravitate towards it. If I saw Elon Musk and I don't know who he was, and I just saw him walking down the street, I would just say some nerd walking down the street. But when you know that he has the amount of money that he has, then you look at him different. You know, I mean, be honest, don't, whatever, but, if you know the man's got billions and he could write you a check to start off your business or whatever, then you treat him different because you know he has that ability. If you saw the strongest MMA fighter, but you don't know who he was, you would just think it's some dude. But if you've seen him tap out somebody big, then you'd be like, I'm not going to mess with that guy. I'm going to let him pass. So, when you don't know somebody, then sometimes you may not take advantage of an opportunity that you have. You could have somebody like Bill Gates come up to you and say, hey, you know what, I see you got a good business, let me write you a check so you can get it going, and you'd be like, I don't know who this guy is, man, I don't want to deal with him. And then later on, people are like, that was Bill Gates. You're like, what, man, I could have gotten everything going. Now, those are just worldly examples because sometimes you need to relate. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one that gives us life. If Allah takes life away from us, wallahi, no doctor, no engineer, no government, no billionaire, nobody can give it to you. Even if you are the richest man in the world and the most powerful as far as worldly means, and if every government's under your feet like Fir'aun, when the order of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala came, he drowned. And even if worldly wise you have no wealth, no army, no lobby, no government, nothing like Musa alayhi salam, but you have Allah on your side, you are successful. See, the khashya of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala needs to enter our hearts, that fear of Allah, that love of Allah, that awareness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because that is what brings success. As Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has told us in the Qur'an, قَدْ أَفْلَحَ, verily they have become successful. Who? Al-mu'minun. Tadabbur, think on the Qur'an, because today, many times I go to masajid and I hear a khutbah and I feel like praying dhuhr afterwards because they say things that contradict the Islamic aqidah. You see a khatib get up and say, if you want to be successful, we have to follow the non-Muslim, we have to follow this lobby, we have to follow this people. If you want to be successful, you have to leave all this, Sharia behind and compromise and sell out. And you're like, what? If that was success, then we should be doing great as an ummah. But it's not. Success is in the obedience of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Success is in the obedience of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Because success is for the believers. And this is why in the tafsir of the ayah, Al-Qurtubi, he mentions that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did not even say, قَدْ أَفْلَحَ الْمُسْلِمُونَ. Allah did not say that the Muslims became successful, but mu'minun, the people of iman. Not just somebody who said the shahada, they're Muslim, alhamdulillah, but somebody who reaches that level of having iman, they are the ones who are success. And what is the sifat? What are the qualifications, or what are the characteristics of such people? The first one mentioned there is that they are people of khushu'. They have that awareness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in their salah. So if you want to be successful in dunya, whether it's wealth, whether it's money, whether it's family, whether it's da'wah, whether it's qital, whether it's jihad, whether it's whatever it may be, if you want success, the first thing you need to do is make sure you are from the mu'minun. Now we don't know. Allah knows the iman of the hearts. We can say we're Muslim. Allah knows if iman has entered our hearts or not. But then you can look at how does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala describe them. Do you have those characteristics in you? When you start your salah, do you have that khushu'? Do you realize you're standing in front of Allah? What is khushu'? The khashya of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Ali ibn Abi Talib radiallahu anhu, he reports from Abdullah ibn Abbas radiallahu anhuma, he says this is to have khaifun, that they are fearful of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now when I say fearful, some people think as if it's the fear of the police. Like when you're driving and those blue lights come on behind you and you hear that siren, now you're worried about getting that ticket. No, this is different. When your parents are old and you love them and you fear upsetting them, that's also a fear, but it's not the same as a police. Our khashya of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has to do with loving Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The Prophet ﷺ had the greatest khashya of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala because he knew Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Today, we have lost that aspect. Today, we don't think that yes, our problems can actually be solved with salah. When the situation in Gaza began, the first thing we did in our masjid, and we are doing till today, is we started to recite Qunut al-Nazila, the dua that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam told us to recite in salah. Yes, there's a lot more for us to do. I'm not saying that's enough. But it's amazing to me how few masajid did it. When we know it's established through Sahih Ahadith, when we know this is the way of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when a calamity hits the ummah, he would implement the recitation of this dua to ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When you have that understanding that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can solve our problems, then there you will find your success. It doesn't just mean that no, you make salah and do nothing else. No, the Sahaba didn't do that. Yes, they went out and they prepared and they struggled and they strove. But all that struggling and striving without that connection with Allah will not give you success. Now, how will we develop that hubb, that love for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? How would we get that Allah loves us? How would we find whether we are on the right track or not? Here we go back to the Qur'an. We go back to the Sahih Ahadith. We go back to the nusus, the evidences. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, "Qul," say it, that if, and this is very important, in kuntum tuhibbun Allah, if you have this claim that you love Allah, fattabi'uni. What do you have to do? Follow me. If you claim you love Allah, follow me. What is the characteristics that, and this is why Sufyan, one of the early tabi'un, he used to say that if you see somebody not following the sunnah, not giving precedence to the sunnah, yet claiming they love Allah, the book of Allah is a witness on them being kadhab, being liars. Today, you see people, we say, in the community, you say we're ashiq al-Rasul, we are lovers of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. We love Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and all day with big banners and this and green and this and that. But when you tell them, look, this is the way the Prophet ﷺ prayed, they say no. When you tell them this is the way Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam fasted, no, brother. Our tradition, my Pir Sahib, my this, my that. No, if you love Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, then that has to take precedence over your madhab, over your community, over your riwaj, and over your traditions, and over your shaykh, and over your imam, and over your father. If you don't love Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam more than anybody else in this world, even more than yourself, iman has not entered your heart. This is it. You look at the Sahaba radiyallahu, they had miracles. You know, we talk about the miracle of the Qur'an. We talk of the miracle of the Prophet ﷺ. Even the Sahaba had miracles. Why? Because they implemented this in their hearts. Look at the adab and obedience and love they had with Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala ordered the Sahaba not to raise their voices above that of Rasul alayhi salatu. You know, one of the Ansar, Thabit ibn Qais al-Ansari, he used to be very eloquent. He had a very strong voice. He was a poet. He was an orator. He was a very good speaker. But he had a loud voice. And when he heard these ayat, he became so afraid, he locked himself in the house. He was afraid to go out, that if my voice does not exceed that of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when he didn't see him in the masjid, he asked, "Where is Thabit?" So the neighbor of Thabit radiyallahu, he went and found him. Told him, "What's going on?" He told him, "I'm afraid to come out. What if these ayat are about me and I'm from the people of An-Nar?" Then he went and told Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Rasulullah told him, "No, bring him and tell him, Bal, no, instead you are from the people of Jannah." Why? Because the adab he had, that obedience he had. You know, we are ordered not to call Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam like we call each other. You know, when you see somebody named Ahmad, you're like, "Ahmad, come here." We are ordered not to be, "Ya Muhammad," no. Instead, you look at the Sahaba, "Ya Rasulullah, Ya Abul Qasim." Today, people have nasheed, "Ya Muhammad, Ya Muhammad." Yeah. They don't even say sallallahu alayhi wasallam. And then they say we're Ashik Rasul. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam, he taught us how to pray. You know, the adhan of Maghrib happens before the iqamah, the short time that you have, 10 ahadith sahihah. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam encouraged the Sahaba to make rak'atayn. Hadith sahih. I'm not saying it's mukkada, but the sunnah is there. Today you go to some masajid, the adhan happens, there's time, you make rak'atayn, they attack you. You tell them a hadith. No, brother. Not in my culture. No, forget your culture. We will follow the sunnah. You know, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he told us that the Yahud are not more jealous of you except in two things. In two things they're very jealous. What? The salam that you say to each other and the ameen. When you say ameen out loud, they're jealous of this. Some masajid you say ameen, oof, man, like you have offended their mother or something. Even though it's from the sunnah. No, we have to give precedence to the sunnah. We have to give precedence to the way of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. We have to say, okay, we have khilaf, we respect ulama, all of that, yes. But if I know something is established from a Rasul alayhi salatu salam, that is above everything else. No more culture, no more shaykh, no more this, no more that. That has to be given precedence. That is how you develop that love for Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. That is how you prove your love for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That is how you improve your situation. Today we've gone so far out that we think as if being obedient to the Qur'an or Sunnah is holding us back, when it's the opposite. The Sahaba radiyallahu, they didn't care about worldly means even. And they did their best, but they didn't hold back to it. Abu Talha, great Sahabi, he was the husband of Sulaym. Sulaym radiyallahu anha, amazing Sahabiya, she is the mother of Anas ibn Malik. When she made her hijrah, it's famous hadith where Abu Talha wanted to marry her and he brought gold and silver and a lot of wealth, but she didn't want any of it. She wanted him to be a Muslim. What was her meher? What was her dowry? What did she want? She wanted his Islam. And Abu Talha, after researching and learning and seeing Islam to be the truth, became a Muslim and a great mujahid and a great Sahabi. At a time he saw Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and he saw signs of hunger on the face of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So he went home and he told Sulaym. He told her, look, do we have food? She said, yes, we have some food. How much do we have? She said, maybe enough for us. That's it. He said, I saw on the face of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam signs of hunger. So let's take our food and give it to him. She didn't say, what? You're taking people over your own family, and what about me? I come first, and you don't know the hadith about being good to your wife. No, she had that love for Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam as well. She said, of course. So Abu Talha, he sent Anas ibn Malik radiyallahu to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam to invite him. And he said, tell him just secretly that we have some food for you. When he came, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Anas bin Malik was a young kid. And it was enough food that he actually had it himself in his possession. It wasn't much. When he saw him, he told him, have you come to invite for food? He said, yes. He said, from Abu Talha? He said, yes. He said, okay. He had 80 of the Sahaba with him. 80 people. He told them, Abu Talha has invited us, let's go. So now when they're going for food that's barely enough for two, and 80 people with Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam are coming, Abu Talha is worried. He sees them, he comes to Sulaym, he tells her, what are we going to do? She said, look, if Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is bringing them, Allah will take care of them. In some of the narrations, she asked him, and how will we feed them? And he said, Allah knows best. So when they came, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam told the Sahaba to come 10 at a time. and he told them to bring the food. And he made the dua on it. And this is from the miracles of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and the miracles of Sahaba. And Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam did not eat. He let the Sahaba eat first. 10 of them ate to their full. Then the next 10, 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 80 Sahaba ate from that food and left. And then Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam ate from it. And then what was left, he wrapped it up and left it for the house. Then Abu Talha and Sulaim ate from it, and Anas ibn Malik ate from it, and they had leftovers. How? How? These are the miracles. When you put tawakkul ala Allah, when you have that reliance upon Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when you have that love for Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. At a time, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam had a guest. And he sent this guest who was hungry, who was traveling, to go to the house of Abu Talha. Same Abu Talha, same Sulaim. And when he came, they told him, this is the guest of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and he's come to eat. Abu Talha, he asked Sulaim, what do we have to eat? She said, we have enough food that maybe we can only feed the kids. He said, what should we do? And look at the iman of this woman. She said, we'll put our children to sleep hungry. And we will not eat. But we will not let the guest of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam return not having eaten. And because this was before the ahkam of hijab were revealed, the orders of hijab came around 5th to 7th year Hijri, later. So the people would come, they would eat together. And she said, if we sit and feed the guests and they realize we're not eating, they will be uncomfortable. So when the guest comes, knock over the lamp so it's dark, so the guest can eat to their full and will not even realize that we have not eaten and our children have not eaten. When this happened, the next day, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed ayat about them. Ayat were revealed about them. So my respected brothers and sisters in Islam, my message for me as a reminder, and my brothers and sisters in Islam, is if we want to be successful, we have to go back to the way of the Salaf al-Salihin, back to the way of the Sahaba radiallahu anhum, back to the way of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam, back to the Qur'an and the Sunnah. We have to bring that khashya of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala into our hearts, not just for a moment. And this is the most important part of this khutbah is right now, so pay attention. A khutbah or a lecture or an ayah you hear or a nasheed that gets you hyped up for a minute and then goes away did not benefit you. But a reminder that changed you or improved your life benefited you. So when you listen to something and you just get hyped up, emotional, even crying, but then you walk out of the door and go back to the same scum that's life, whatever you were doing, then that will be a hujjah against you on the Day of Judgment. Instead, what we need to do is right now evaluate. Allah gave me life. I could have been dead this morning. When you woke up today, millions around the world didn't wake up. Around the world, every day, people don't wake up. They die in their sleep. So Allah gave you life. You're not in a hospital. You're not in a jail cell. You're not going through those trials and tribulations that others are going through. When Allah gave you all this afiyah, all this good, what are you going to do with it? What are you going to change about your life? Alhamdulillah, as a Muslim community, we need to come together. We need to strive. We need to struggle. We need to do what we can. We need to stand up for ourselves as Muslims. And we need to organize and be united together. How will we unite? not upon a firqa or a group, no, upon the Qur'an and the Sunnah. Like our brothers, the Mubashirun, mashallah, you will see them here from Leicester that have come and they've started a youth center where they have sports and they have da'wah and they have all kinds of programs. It's not for me, I'm from San Diego. But these brothers here in the UK, they're stepping up. They're going and they're helping people, they're mowing people's lawns, they're building bridges with communities, they're out there doing things to improve the situation of not just the Muslims but the non-Muslims here in the UK, so you can see a good example of Islam. So now, I know everybody has their own things that they want to spend on, but myself included, and again, I'm not a paid speaker or something like this, I'm just here for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but I would like all of us to help them and donate to them and know that whatever you give will not decrease your mal. A sadaqah never takes away from your mal. Look at that example of the Sahaba we gave and the barakah that they got in their life from giving for the sake of Allah. We hope that Allah will put that barakah in our life and open up our hearts and make us united and make us together and make us firm in these trials and tribulation and these harsh times when we see a lot of our brothers in the UK being attacked based on false rumors, by racism and all kinds of things. It's a time for us to now come together. High time for us to stand up and develop our communities for the next generation. وجزاكم الله خيرا. أقول قولي هذا واستغفر الله. الحمد لله. الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على خاتم الأنبياء أشرف المرسلين وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين. يا رب العالمين، يا أول الأولين، يا آخر الآخرين، يا ذا القوة المتين، فاغفر لنا وارحمنا إنك أنت الغفور الرحيم. ظلمنا أنفسنا ظلم كثير ولا يغفر الذنوب إلا أنت، فاغفر لنا وارحمنا إنك أنت الغفور الرحيم. اللهم نعوذ بك من عذاب القبر. اللهم نعوذ بك من عذاب القبر. اللهم نعوذ بك من عذاب القبر. اللهم نعوذ بك من النار. اللهم نعوذ بك من النار. اللهم نعوذ بك من النار وما قرب إليها من قول وعمل. اللهم نسألك الجنة. اللهم نسألك الجنة. اللهم نسألك الجنة لنا ولوالدينا لمن له حقا علينا. اللهم نسألك الجنة وما قرب إليها من قول أو عمل يا رب العالمين. يشفى مرضانا واغفر موتانا إنك أنت الغفور الرحيم. وأخي أقم الصلاة.
ومن أحسن قولا ممن دعا إلى الله وعمل صالحا وقال إن